Hi there, welcome to this Ayurveda and Aromatherapy series. This is the first video in the series, and this is really an introduction to Ayurveda itself, a very brief little insight into the history of essential oils, and to really just lay some foundations here before we progress. So I hope that you find it really helpful and informative and very inspiring. And I'd like to start by simply introducing you to Ayurveda. Ayur meaning life, Veda meaning science. Of course, these are two Sanskrit words and they have multiple meanings, but this is the general, most commonly regarded interpretation of Ayurveda. And the beautiful thing about Ayurveda is that it's really a system of preventative healthcare, proactive healthcare, disease prevention, which is one of the main reasons why I've felt so drawn to this science and this path for many years. Now, Ayurveda, like Chinese medicine, is based on the 5-element theory, so that of earth, air, fire, water, and ether or space. And when we consider the environment around us, it's very obvious that these elements are part of life. And therefore, it's really invaluable to understand how that then translates to a representation of the 5 elements within us. And they are within us because we are part of nature, although our world today makes us feel somewhat separate at times. So the 5-element theory is then further categorized into the 3 dosha theory. The word dosha means to destroy or to spoil. So it's when these qualities become out of balance in the body, or the elements become out of balance in the body. So regarding the elements, we can understand, for example, water is the fluids in the body, urine, blood, saliva, etc. The fire would be the sense of sight and the act of transformation of seeing things, and our digestive fire, so assimilation and transformation of our food. Earth being, the bones, the muscles, etc. So we have the 5 elements within us. So we are all made up of the 5 elements. This is really important to know straight up, particularly if you're very new to Ayurveda. Now, Ayurveda is a Vedic science. It's been around for thousands of years. We don't know exactly when, but we do have a lot of Vedic texts which are from a very long time ago. And it is like all ancient traditions, it was originally an oral tradition and slowly got written down over time. So we take these 5 elements and we then take it even further, as mentioned, into the 3 dosha theory. So the 3 dosha theory is the theory of vata, pitta, and kapha. Now remember, we are made up of the 5 elements, and so therefore we are also made up of the 3 doshas, each and every one of us. However, at birth, we have our own unique constitution. So this is what's called our prakriti. And our constitution is just like DNA. It's based on really the constitutions of our parents. It might be the color of their eyes are going to definitely dictate what is most likely going to be the color of our eyes, and so forth, and our skin type and our hair and whatnot. So it's not such an esoteric concept, but it may sound as if it is because it's Sanskrit terminology. So our prakriti is really looking at which of the doshas is more dominant in us. So when we consider the 3 doshas, vata is made up of the qualities of air and space. Pitta is made up of fire and water, predominantly fire. And kapha is made up of water and earth. Okay. So remember, we're made up of the 5 elements, therefore we have the 3 doshas within us. But we have our own unique mix of the doshas and the unique mix of these qualities within us physically and mentally and emotionally. So for example, my constitution is vata pitta or pitta vata. These are the 2 doshas that are most dominant within me. And that's based on my physical body type in every way, okay, not just my body weight or my height, but my skin, my hair quality, hair color, my eyes, and whatnot. It's also around the quality of and tendency of your digestive system, your personality, your mental state or trait foundationally. So essentially we're looking at that different makeup or balance of the doshas within us to understand our own unique constitutional prakriti. So for example, you might be a Pitta constitution, you might be a Kapha constitution, or a Vata constitution, or a mix of two, which is most common, or which is very rare, a mix of three in equal balance. Okay, there's no good, bad, right or wrong. Each of the doshas have their own positive and not so great traits when they're out of balance. Okay, but we need to just understand that these qualities are within us, and therefore take that understanding into our use of essential oils, so we can start to use the essential oils into more of a prescriptive format or context to support us physically, mentally, and emotionally based on our constitution, but also the qualities of the doshas that are dominant in us at any given time. So this is the concept of vikriti. So you might be born, for example, as a Pitta dosha. So the Pitta qualities are most high in you. Maybe you have a fiery nature. Maybe you are very determined and driven. Maybe you have red hair, not necessarily for Pitta, these are all generalized statements. Maybe you have a really strong digestive fire. So these are all potential qualities of a Pitta person, organically or innately. But perhaps at the moment, you're carrying a lot of body weight and you have a sluggish lymphatic system, holding a lot of fluids, you're feeling really lethargic, slow, craving lots of sweets. And then it might very well that you have a kapha imbalance. You have a dominance of kapha in you. So this would be your vikriti. Which of the doshas is actually dominant and most present in you at any given time? So this is what we're really looking for from a prescriptive perspective. So whilst it's fantastic to know your dosha, because that will give you a little bit of insight into where you're most likely to fall out of balance and to have an excess or disharmony, but we really need a nice grasp of all the doshas so we can be absolutely informed and empowered no matter what comes our way. Yeah. Whenever a dosha is out of balance, vata is always involved. So vata governs mobility. The qualities of vata are dry, cold, irregular, mobile, erratic. Okay, so these are the qualities of vata. And vata really governs the autumn season. So things dry out, we get the winds, it gets cold. So autumn and early winter are very vata dominant in our external environment. And we may also have those qualities within us. We might feel very irregular, frazzled, our skin might be dry, our throat might be dry, we might feel really fatigued and worn out, and the mind is really busy and mobile and going. So we might also have a lot of vata aggravation within us. So Pitta, on the other hand, and again, it is easier to understand these doshas from a more negative perspective or imbalanced perspective. But, you know, a vata person, vata qualities are very creative, for example, have wonderful communication and generally really good bodily coordination and mobility and agility. So again, it's different. But a Pitta person out of balance, or someone with a dominance of Pitta might have a lot of aggression, impatience, intolerance, a lot of physical skin rashes or skin inflammation in general in the body, issues of irritable bowel syndrome, purely just as an example. It's not quite this black and white because we do treat everyone as an individual, but these are just examples. And then finally we have kapha. And so, so Pitta is governing the summer season, so late spring and into summer. And then we go into autumn and early winter, which is vata, as I mentioned. And then finally we go into kapha season, which is, middle of winter onward to middle of spring approximately. It really depends on where you live in your climate. So the qualities of kapha are cold, like vata, but damp, heavy, slow, unctuous, more oily, okay, and more lethargic perhaps. But a kapha person is also very patient and loving, and they might have very lustrous skin depending on if it's in balance or out of balance. Yeah. And then I didn't mention, but Pitta is more hot, heating, oily, sharp, light. So there's different qualities to the three doshas, and as we begin to appreciate them and understand them, we can really see how they manifest in us physically, mentally, and also in our environment. So they're the three doshas, and that's our three dosha theory based on the 5 elements. The doshas themselves, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, also have 5 sub-doshas each, which really we look at, again, from a therapeutic and prescriptive standpoint when we're working one-on-one with someone. But in the context of what we're doing here with Ayurveda and Aromatherapy, just understanding the 3 doshas is perfect. So as I mentioned, they govern different times of the year, so different seasons. Then the doshas also govern different times of the day. So 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is Vata time. So we tend to, if we've got a lot of Vata in us, maybe naturally or an imbalance, we'll wake up early, or we'll be unsettled in the mornings, or we're naturally an early riser. This is a great time to do your yoga and meditation practice. And then from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., we move into Kapha stage. So if you sleep past 6 a.m., you're more likely to find it very hard to get up and get going. If you're sleeping until 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, there's a sluggishness, a lethargy, a heaviness, a dullness. So we want to make sure we're up and moving the body by 6 a.m. And then from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., this is when the sun is at its highest, at its peak, and this is when Pitta, the fire quality, is at its peak as well. This is when our digestive system is strongest. This is when we should eat the biggest meal of the day, because our digestive fire and system, our Agni, is more able to digest and assimilate and process and metabolize everything that we're taking in. So that's our largest meal of the day. It's also the time where we want to schedule most of our work between 10 and 2. And then we wrap up our work day, hopefully in an ideal world, by 2 p.m. And from 2 p.m. till 6 p.m, again, we revisit Vata. This is when we can feel a lot of fatigue, the afternoon slump. It's when we should be doing really nice, nourishing things. If you need a nap, not always for everybody, depending, but that might be what you actually need. And maybe it's a walk outside in the fresh air and the sunshine. Maybe it's some grounding yin yoga or something. So looking to pacify those Vata qualities. Warm cup of tea, etc. So then from 6 p.m, when we should ideally have our last meal of the day, to give our digestive system time to process that meal so that it can rest, digest, and repair during sleep. From 6 p.m. to 10 p.m, we're back in the Kapha stage once again. So this is when innately we should be winding down for bed. And unfortunately, in our modern world, we're on technology far too much at this time. So we're unable to tap into the existing qualities in nature of Kapha. But between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. is when we're really looking to embody the Kapha qualities to wind down for the evening and to get a really, really good quality sleep. So we've had an early dinner and then able to digest our food, and we are in bed, asleep, lights out, no technology, before ideally 10 p.m, but 10 p.m. at the latest. So then we're asleep before we cycle into the last stage here, which is the last final appearance of Pitta, so from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. And this is when, if we go to bed late, we can then end up with insomnia. We find it hard to go to sleep. We get more irritable and agitated. We get maybe the second wind, a second surge of energy. That Pitta energy comes through, and we can have a bit of a short fuse. You think of people who don't live the most ideal lifestyle, and they're out drinking alcohol till late at night and things go pear-shaped. So that's our Pitta stage. So that's a cycle, a 24-hour cycle, and how the doshas impact the cycle. And then lastly, the doshas also impact different stages of life. So from birth, we are born into a Kapha stage, and this goes all the way up until our teenage years to puberty, when we get our first surge of hormones. And that's when we transition into Pitta. So those first few years of life, from birth to puberty, is when we are really tapping into the qualities of Kapha, and the building quality, the dense qualities. A lot of kids have runny, snotty noses, so that imbalanced state of Kapha, the mucus, and lots of colds and flus and coughs and things. But the body is essentially developing its bones and its muscle tissue. It's building. That's the Kapha qualities. And then from puberty onward until the end of menopause, that entire stage of our life is governed by Pitta. It's when we're really driven, when we're out in the world, when we're focusing on our careers and family, and being very outwardly and externally focused. So that's when we have our drive of energy. And then, of course, we have that surge of pitta and heat in the body during menopause. And then from there, after menopause, for women, of course, we then move into the final stage of life, which is the vata stage. And the vata stage of life is when, we, by nature, our whole body starts to break down slowly over time. So there's a lot more weakness, the muscles break down, the tissues break down, the bones become more weak. And so obviously people who have more vata innately in their constitution will definitely notice this. People who have a lot of kapha in their constitution in a balanced way, a lot of ojas, a lot of really nice life force, they're the people that age very well. So they're very fortunate. That's for sure. So we have the doshas governing the seasons, governing the cycle of the day, and governing the stages of life. So these are really important things to understand, because it's all good and well to get hung up on our own constitution or which dosha is present in us, which is fantastic to know that. But it's really lovely to know just where are we at in life? What season are we in? And to have a harmonious connection to nature, certainly. So essential oils didn't exist in the form that we know them today back when Ayurveda first began, because it's thousands of years old. But there's a little overlap there, in India and in Egypt and in like the Greeks and the Romans, they all use plant extracts and plant resins and barks and leaves and so forth. We do have historically record of some clay distillation in Persia in 2500 BC, and there's certainly evidence of a lot of use of essential oils in Greece throughout history. But the practices or the use of essential oil, the modern rediscovery of essential oils, if you will, was around 1000 AD. And since then, it's obviously been used widely throughout history. I mean, essential oils were probably the strongest form of medicine for a really long time. And even in World War II, essential oils were used to treat soldiers and their injuries for their antibacterial and antiseptic properties. So there's a real significance with respect to them being used in history. And even if you go to France, for example, or look through the history in France, so we have the French model or path of aromatherapy and the American approach to aromatherapy. So they do have their differences. But even in France, aromatherapy is a very valid therapy. Throughout history, there have been cases where you can claim essential oils on insurance, and they're distributed through pharmacies and whatnot. So this is really, really not a new thing, even though essential oils might seem quite trendy and very popularized at the moment. But I mean, I think that's for very, very good reason. So essential oils are plant extracts, and we can use all parts of plants. So leaves, bark, stems, the roots, the flowers, you name it. We can use all different parts of plants. And in many cases, you might use the flower off the same tree that you're using, the leaves that you're using, the bark, and all those three parts of the plant have completely different properties, as well as the aroma being exceptionally different as well, which is wonderful. And the most common method of extraction and distillation is to steam distill, and then of course to cold press. So these are the two ways to basically get access to these oils from the plants in a way that maintains their properties as best as possible, maintains their potency as best as possible. So you have three ways to use essential oils, and that's aromatically, topically, and internally. So aromatically has a tremendous impact on our mind and emotions. So we can inhale essential oils. The essential particles can remain in the air for quite some time. More frequently is most effective than big hits of essential oil. So using your essential oils very often, very, very consistently and very regularly in small amounts is actually proven to be far more effective. So when we're using the oils aromatically, we're tapping into the olfactory system and that primitive part of the brain, the limbic system. And this is where, that's the center of mood, memory, and emotions, which is very, very powerful. And this is suggested to be the safest way to be using essential oils. But your essential oils, no matter whether or not you inhale them, put them on your skin, or take them internally, they will end up in your bloodstream no matter what. So we'll come to the importance of your essential oils in that respect from a safety sense in a moment. But then topical is applying the oils to your skin. 9 times out of 10, we're going to say to use a carrier oil. You're always using a carrier oil for children, babies, and elderly people. But there are instances for adults where you don't necessarily have to, but when in doubt, just always use a carrier oil. Yeah. So we're going to talk in this series about carrier oils that are specific for the doshas, or which therefore means specific for the seasons, the time of the year, or maybe the time of in your life. So not only that therapeutic application. And then finally, internal use. You don't have to take the oils internally, but the food flavoring industry uses essential oils more than any industry, more than the beauty industry, more than the perfume industry, which might seem pretty wild, but that's, when you actually understand what is in perfumes, you'll realize why they actually don't really use essential oils very much, because most perfumes on the market are synthetic and very, very, very toxic. So again, you don't need to use essential oils in food because less is more. But the food industry has been using essential oils for a really long time, and you're probably already consuming essential oils and you don't even know it. Okay. So as long as you're using a food grade essential oil, but we'll come to that in a moment. So the Ayurvedic application of essential oils beyond the general therapeutic properties that are the main focus of Western aromatherapy or modern aromatherapy is that we really consider the quality of essential oils. And this is the same as food from an Ayurvedic approach, what food we're consuming. So we want to know, is the essential oil drying or is it moisturizing? We want to know if it's going to have a heating effect or a cooling effect. And that may not be what you literally feel if you're putting it on your body or breathing it in, but the effect that it has on your tissues. And this is very much an element of the diet component of the foods that we consume from an Ayurvedic perspective. So this is what just makes aromatherapy it takes it a little deeper when we look at these qualities and these elements of the essential oils from that Ayurvedic viewpoint. So I'm going to leave that there. I'd just like to close by sharing why I choose to use doTERRA. And there are 3 main reasons. Because, it's very important to emphasize that the essential oil industry is not regulated. Anybody can start an essential oil company and put whatever they want in a bottle, and you can get away with labeling it 100% pure, even if it is 100% synthetic. That is the scary reality. So I personally align with doTERRA because they are approved as food grade by the FDA in the United States, and then also here in Australia they're approved by the Food Standards Australia and New Zealand. There are companies selling food products, very beautiful, organic, nutritious, sweet, good food products in Australia who use doTERRA essential oils. So if it's good enough to eat, then I am happy to put it on my skin and put it in the air, because if it's not good enough to eat, I don't want to breathe it in. Okay, and I don't want to put it on my skin. That's why I don't use mainstream perfume or skincare or beauty products. So this is a very, very important element. And it's not to say that you have to take oils internally. But if you're looking at another brand and they say, oh, well, you shouldn't, well, I'm afraid that's a little bit of ignorance and perhaps them trying to protect themselves. So your essential oil should be good enough to eat and approved as good enough to eat. The second reason is transparency. doTERRA is the only company on the planet that shares their third-party testing with the general public on every single batch of essential oils. Every single large vat of essential oils gets tested tens of times. I think I don't want to put on record here how many. I feel like it's between 30 and 40 times, but it could be more than that. Gets tested that many times in-house and externally. And they publish all their external testing for the general public on every single batch of essential oils that you have in your hand. No other company is doing that, and you have to wonder why. You have to wonder why, because in an unregulated industry, it really should be required. And then finally, their sourcing methods. Whilst there are other companies that are also doing a wonderful job in the world sourcing indigenously where the plants best thrive, and supporting other communities and small villages and folks around the world, all around the world, doTERRA is the only company that hasn't bought their own farmland, cleared farmland to grow their own. So whilst there are other companies, as I said, sourcing indigenously and where the plants best thrive in the world, and you know, like doTERRA assisting with pest species and whatnot, those companies have cleared farmland and purchased farmland to cut costs and grow their own. doTERRA have not done this. And that's really, really important to me. So that's why I choose doTERRA. But at the end of the day, you can make your own choice, but it's really lovely to know that there's a lot of transparency and quality and purity in doTERRA essential oils. So I hope you found this introductory video helpful, and it's exciting for you to now dive a little deeper. So in the upcoming videos, we're going to dive into the specific essential oils for the doshas. We're going to dive into the art of blending top, middle, and base notes. So you can start to actually make yourself blends for the doshas. For example, you could make a Vata blend. You could make a blend for Vata Kapha if that's your constitution, or perhaps you're in the middle of winter and that's what's present and going on in the environment around you, and you know that's what you need. You could make a blend to diffuse in your home that's beautiful for pacifying Vata and Kapha. So starting to understand the blending would be a really, really fun way for you to take this knowledge and apply it in a practical manner into daily life. So we'll talk about blending. We'll talk about the oils specifically for the doshas, and we'll talk also about the carrier oils for the doshas as well. So you can look to use the carrier oil as if it's medicine in itself, as if it's therapy in itself, which is wonderful. All right, thank you so much for listening and for being a part of this. And anytime, please reach out if you would like some more clarity on anything that I've shared with you in this video. And thanks so much for being here.